And the last thing before we end the episode is we have some really big news out of Calgary.
The end of the Boston pizza era
The
in
end of the
Calgary.
Boston pizza era in Calgary. Brad Treliving and the Calgary Flames have decided to part ways. I don't know if that was announced Sunday afternoon or Monday. I can't remember off the top of my head. But surprised, like, are you surprised by this? Are you concerned? What was your initial reaction?
Um, I think for me, there was already that risk when I think there was the extension talks in place, but he just wanted to bet on himself, see where
Yeah.
things go. And my initial feeling is, how do you assess his legacy now in Calgary? He's been there what, 8 seasons, I believe.
I think he's either the longest or second longest tenured Canadian NHL
Yeah.
GM. Let me double check.
I think from when he he took that job until now, in a way, like he did help rejuvenate the Flames because his first draft was getting Sam Bennett, I believe, right? Yeah, that was his first round pick. And I think it's tough when you look at what the era was before. It was the Jerome McGinley era, and then you try to get into a place where you feel that, okay, let's try to build something else here. Let's try to get established guys. And I think he really did do that with who he brought in there. Like Johnny Gaudreau was already drafted into the system, but he blossomed to a star under Treliving. You had Matthew Tkachuk. He improved the defense. He was very, very adamant on adding a lot of goalies. You remember Brian Elliott was there, and then
Mhm.
had like a carousel of guys before he finally got Jacob Markstrom. And I think he did his best to make a contender in Calgary. He traded, he was active, he gave the guys the extensions. I think that he didn't do a bad job. I know that there was no finals appearances, there were no big cup runs that we expected from this team when they were making these types of deals, but I think that that's what I kind of leave it with because I think he had to pivot quickly in the offseason. I think that's when things started to just really kind of unravel where he just didn't stay put. And we really did applaud him for that. He got Jonathan Huberdeau. I didn't expect Huberdeau to get 55 points this year, 115 points to 55 points. I didn't expect
Yeah.
that. Getting Nazim Kadri to that contract, he just refused to rebuild. He refused to go to these like painful retools. And I think that's what you should be remember him for. But at the same time, we talked about that a new voice is probably needed in Calgary. I think things were getting a bit stale, and it's nothing on his part. It's just I think the Flames just they fell short of what he wanted there, and it's been long enough.
Right. So he was there for 9 years.
9
Just
years,
double. It
okay,
would be 9 years in like 2 weeks. So let's just call it 9 years.
okay,
Um, I want to throw this wrinkle in the mix because this was an interesting thing that it sounded like Frank Saravelli had tweeted out, and it sounded like he was essentially implying this that it was really between him and Daryl Sutter. And obviously, I think Daryl Sutter signed an extension earlier this year. I'm just going to double check Cap Friendly to see if we know how long that extension is going to be. But yeah, so Daryl Sutter has 2 more years after this one. I guess that would be part of his extension. Did the Calgary Flames make the right decision? We know because you bring up
yeah.
Jonathan Huberdeau, you bring up Nazem Kadri, who didn't have as good as seasons as they've had in the past. The overall environment seemed horrible for a lot of the season. Did the Calgary Flames make the right decision in not bringing back Brad Treliving instead of Daryl Sutter?
Ooh, it's a tough one because I think from our perspective, I think it was a bad choice because of what we talked about with what Daryl Sutter was doing with lineup. We always viewed him as a John Tortorella type of coach where when he first there, the message received and it amps the players, it gets things going. But then when success is not found gradually. It just it it's like he lost the room in a way. And again, this is, we're not experts, we're not there. We're just, it's just that feeling of, you saw on the ice of the frustrations from a lot of players. And but I think the perspective we just don't have is like his impact on Calgary and his legacy with the team and what they want to try to do with that. And I think that's just the one part I just don't understand, I guess, from being in Toronto and not knowing in Calgary. Like, for my opinion, it's just odd. To be honest, it's just odd. It's just odd that this guy looks like he lost the room. The star guys were not playing the way they should have played. Jacob Markstrom got lit up, and then he still played a back to back. These were just decisions. Again, Nick Ritchie in the shootout. There's just these decisions that I thought Daryl Sutter would be the one out, and then they were going to figure out maybe a Treliving extension, or it's just they're both out. I like my prediction was they were just going to be both out there. I think they were gonna. I thought they were going to do like something similar to like a Pittsburgh situation. I know Mike Sullivan is still there as coach, but I
Mm-hmm.
think you kind of clean house in many other aspects of the
Right.
organization.
Well, I mean, I guess we should note the relationship between, or the love
Yeah,
of Flames owner Murray Edwards and Daryl Sutter. Like I wonder if that. I mean, I wonder. We can make a very good, almost guarantee that that played a massive part into this, and I wonder how that's. I don't know. I that was an interesting decision. Like,
yeah,
to say the least. And I think, I don't remember if it was Treliving who said it, or someone had reported it, but that there was the option of rebuilding a couple of years ago or last season, and they didn't. And now I wondered. Now, obviously, Don Maloney is going to be is the interim, like, I think,
mhm,
president of
yeah.
hockey
Hockey operation.
operations.
Yeah,
So I wonder if that's a conversation they revisit. It's going to be a hell of a lot harder to do that now, considering some of the contracts they have, or the big boys they they have. It's going to be
yeah,
a bit trickier to pull that off. But I just don't get the keeping Sutter. Like, even if you don't keep Brad Treliving, but the fact that you chose Sutter over Treliving, and I know when Don Maloney had his press conference, he kind of pushed away from saying Sutter's going to be back, but it was just odd all around for the way it went down. I just don't get it. But
yeah. And I think for me, keeping in mind, Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin as examples, these are guys
mhm.
that are going to need new contracts, and
Yep.
it's really going to be based on like how are they responding to a Daryl Sutter system? Do they still want to be there long term?
Right. And this is all those two guys in particular have a year left. I know there's a couple other guys who still have another year left on their contract. And it's like, well, if you're going to make a decision, you better make it and now, and figure out what you're going to do, because the draft's coming up. You can make some nice deals at the draft. You never know. Um, we'll see. I don't know. That's it. They're in a weird spot. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't. I don't understand. I just need someone to explain it to me.